I want to talk about heading out of bounds in games and what that entails and what it means and what it says about a player's relationship with a game. This is Final Fantasy XV episode Duskai, and I am not where I've agreed to be. Now, I say that very deliberately because when a player boots up a game, they forge a sort of unspoken contract with the game. We say something along the lines of, I accept that this is a simulation, I will suspend my disbelief while also accepting the rules and structures of this simulation in exchange for entertainment, frenetic interaction, or other desired ends. There's a spectrum of things we might want to get out of a game. Yet, it's a weird thing. I accept the reality of a simulation, and I do it so that I can take certain emotions, experiences, or truths sort of back from my interaction. Duskai is really concerned with backing up this arrangement. If I reach the edges of the proposed map, literal barriers pop up and I get a little text prompt that tells me that I've reached the end of the road and that I'll get the rest of experience, the rest of the world in Final Fantasy XV. It's a really strong assertion of the boundaries that the game wants to contain me in. But it sort of goes beyond this. However, if I head out of bounds at certain points of the map in this game, the game will detect this, and it will tell me that I've broken out of these boundaries, and then it will give me an automatic game over and stop me from playing. Duskai is so concerned with asserting the reality of its space that it will prevent me from playing the game further if it feels that the simulation it's maintaining is existentially threatened by my actions, at least in certain areas. It doesn't always catch this, that's why I'm going out of bounds here. But it's a really aggressive way of sort of asserting the game's value over the value of the player. And I don't really care that much about things, I don't think the player is necessarily important, but it is very strange in terms of an imposition of value by the text upon the player. It sort of says, I'm more important than you. But yet, here, as I sort of pass by this floating no entry sign, a really great visual metaphor for what I'm talking about, I start to assert my dominance over the game, and I forcibly expand the game space. And the deeper that I sort of make my way towards the geometric center of the game, the game fears my arrival. Games tend to fear that as we move away from their maintained structures and rules, they'll lose a certain degree of fecundity for facilitating the things that we asked for back when the silent contract was formed. But really the opposite is true. The more I'm able to push towards the ephemeral realms of a game, the more my relationship with a text is highlighted rather than threatened. It's sort of stressed. But games don't necessarily get this because video games are very existentially conflicted artifacts. They struggle with the notion that they're presenting, quote-unquote real spaces, when what they're truthfully offering are simulacra that we agree have a certain degree of validity. The more we move away from the structured elements of a game and assert our own value over that of the space, the more a game fears the total collapse of any truth it might have held. That's the reason Duskai gives me all those game overs when I break into certain areas and begin to explore them. It's really fragile on the part of the game's ego. The game wants to declare, I am, I exist, I am real, I am extant, but that declaration doesn't hold as much weight as we break down all the barriers in our way, sort of, which is why games tend to fight us at any given moment and try to assert their dominance over us more than anything else. But as I head down here into this major focal point area of Duskai, there's this really strange thing that I'm going to find, and you can kind of see it here as I move around the corner, and you see this giant foot. It's really great. It's this really strange metaphysical sort of thing on the part of the narrative space, but also a really apt visual metaphor for what I'm talking about. So the Titan is holding up the crystal at the center of the space, and there's all sorts of things that we can think about what the implications are, like within a text sense, in a lore sense. but it's this really fitting image for what's happening with games in a lot of sense. They buckle under the weight of their structures, right? They struggle, they really truly struggle to hold up the simulation, and that struggle is considerably straining. Games don't want us to see the struggle, and they try and hide it, but moving out of bounds in games tends to reveal this crisis in a very strong and demonstrably, observable way. So not only are we breaking the contract that we implicitly make with the game when we start playing, we also start to see games for what they really are once we move out of bounds. And there's something about that that's really scary, but also really beautiful. Games are these sort of fragile things that are sort of doing their best to impress you, but at the same time they fight you because they want to assert their own existence alongside you. And so our relationship with games is complicated as we explore the areas that they don't intend for us to find.